Put God first.
Your presence in their lives gives them validation.
Our children don't need us to be superheroes.
If you do these things, the next generation and the generations that follow will live in a world far better than the one we have today.
Men, stand up, be fathers.
Welcome to the Inspired Legacy Podcast, Season 1, Episode 13. Hey everybody, I'm Mark Henderson, your host and founder of the Inspired Legacy. Our mission, to celebrate fatherhood, equipping men to lead boldly, love like Christ, and leave a lasting legacy. And that's the word we're going to be diving into today, the word legacy. Now, obviously, that can be a financial gift. I think that's what most people associate it with. It could be a gift of some kind of personal property. But I really think that the most impactful legacy, especially as it pertains to fatherhood and, you know, this entire platform that I've developed in this entire show, as it pertains to that conversation, I think it's most impactful when we talk about what we leave behind in the way of advice we give our kids, the wisdom we instill, and the examples we set by the way we live our lives. And when we think of our lives as a story, a story has a beginning and an end, and one that will be reflected upon by others, most notably our own kids, for literally years, then viewing our lives from this perspective, really, it should give us absolute clarity on what we need to do now, today, in this moment, to ensure our story lives on in a godly way. Well, to help me unpack all of this, the concept of legacy, as well as some practical ways that we can get our stories down on paper and in the hands of those we want to impact the most, I had Jeremy Brown join me on the show today. Jeremy is the founder of Throne Publishing. It's a company that literally specializes in helping people craft and tell their stories for the sake of family legacy. I absolutely love what Jeremy and his team are doing. They've interviewed literally thousands of people from, I think he said, more than 20 countries, really from all walks and stages of life. And he and his team, they've equipped countless numbers of people to share their stories in some form or another, usually in a book. He has a ton of insight in this area, and I'm just really excited for you guys to hear what he has to say and for us to dive in. So with that, I give you my interview with Jeremy Brown. Jeremy, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Hey, I am pumped to be here. I'm looking forward to it, and I can't wait to dive in. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Like I mentioned offline, I'm excited to dive in. Our schedules were a little tricky, mostly on my end, so I appreciate you being patient. I'm glad this worked out. But today we're going to be talking about, at least the plan is to talk about legacy. We're going to go wherever the conversation takes us, but legacy is obviously something that intrigues and excites me because, you know, I crafted my whole platform around it, the Inspired Legacy. But I think I think of legacy, I think it's almost an innate human need. So it's almost like God wired us for it, you know? I think
100%.
It gives us a, context to our place in this world, this side of heaven anyway. Gives us a sense of identity, at least when we're younger, and then we kind of take on our own identity. And I think in some cases, it almost sets the bar for us to strive for something in our future, right?
That's right.
Yeah, but I think most people are aware of what legacy is. Some people are more intentional about creating it, or I probably should say curating it, right? Curating a legacy. And again, that's something we're going to be diving into. But before we get too much further, I want to turn the microphone over to you, Jeremy. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us your dad bio. I know at one point you were a single dad, so maybe start there. How did you go from being a single dad into what you're doing now?
Oh, the Lord.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say, Mark, I really am pumped to be on this. I'm glad to be doing this. I mean, I'm a follower of the Inspired Legacy, and I want to encourage people. I know you didn't tell me to say this, and you might not even like me saying this, Mark, but I want to encourage people to go out to theinspiredlegacy.com. You have, Mark, a bunch of free goodies. You got your blog, you got the podcast, and there's a really cool guide you can get there, and it's all free. So I love what you're up to.
Yeah, thanks, man.
When you reached out, I was just really pumped to be on this. My dad bio starts starts before I was born. I have to tell you this, that a moment of clarity in my life. I can still remember where I was, what the whiteboard looked like, but I was writing out the narrative of my life in the form of a timeline. And then something occurred to me. I said, you know what? I'm going to go backwards before I was born. And I looked at the matriarchs and patriarchs that came before me in my family lines. And at that moment in time, it occurred to me, I just remember it clear as day, that one of the things I'm going to do with my life is pour into other men, because I have one side of my family that is everything you would want to be in a man. Now, they weren't perfect, but the model of manhood. And I had the other side of my family that is literally the complete opposite. And I realized in that moment, like, man, this is a big, huge, hairy deal in my life, this fatherlessness and this fatherhood. So fast forward to when I was 19, I did not know the value of marriage, did not want to be married at all. I'm living with a girl and I get her pregnant. So I have a kid 2 weeks before I turn 20. And I remember, Mark, holding my son, Jordan, who is 15 years old now. I remember holding him thinking, you know what, if there's a God out there that likes me even a tenth of how much I love this little one, like, there's something to that. And I'd been going to church, been a church guy my whole life, but I didn't know Jesus as a man. And what I set out to do then, I became a dad, and I'm like, I'm going to be the best man I can possibly be for this kid. And so what I didn't know, though, is I did not have a definition of manhood. And so, you know better than I do, Mark, when we don't have a definition, we subconsciously go out and we get it from the world.
Absolutely.
So I got it from Entrepreneur Magazine, GQ, CNBC, which said my manhood is equivalent to money, women, and business. And so that's what I set out to do. I needed to have more money, if not real, then perceived, than my friends. I need to have a bigger business than my friends. And I need to have a better girlfriend than my friends. If she's a train wreck, so what? If she's good looking, that's all I care about. And that's how I lived, quite a few years of my life. And, long story short, I won't dive into where you want to dive into, Mark, but, I build a pretty big business. I had a partner that embezzled money from me. So I lost money, women, and business in my late 20s. Business I had went away, money I had went away. A girl thought I was going to marry breaks up with me, and I couldn't get her back. So there I had the sources of identity, money, women, and business were all gone. And I couldn't make more money to solve those problems, because that's how I problem solved back then. And then, long story short, the Lord really gets a hold of me, changes my heart. It sounds so fluffy, but that's what he did. He gave me the heart, a different heart. And because of that, now I've got a wife that is like a miracle for me to even have or be in her presence. And we have now our third son is going to arrive in September 17th of this year.
Oh, congratulations, man. I don't think I knew that.
I'm so pumped. And our deal is, I'm like, sweetheart, you are in control. It is your body that goes through this craziness that is pregnancy. But I'm like, however many kids you want to have, I want to have. If you want to have 20, I want to have 20. So we're going to go at least one more. I hope we go. I was told by one of my friends that once you get past 4, it gets easier. So I'm like, okay, I would love to have 6 kids. I would just love it, but we just have to see what's actually feasible.
Oh man. I'm instantly reminded of the Jim Gaffigan joke where it says, you want to know what it's like to have, I think it's, your third child. I don't remember how it goes, but it's like, imagine drowning and then somebody hands you a baby.
That's hilarious. It's one of those things where, I could see that being a funny joking on the square. And I'll tell you my vision though, man. You're talking about legacy.
And just real quick, just one other quick comment there based on your story there. Isn't it interesting that your entire foundation was built upon what the world considered to be important, and that's what crumbled?
100%. It went away quick.
Yeah.
And I always solved my problems by making more money. And I had problems that I could not solve with money.
Yeah. Well, that's what the world teaches us, right? Money solves all your problems, and that's really not the case.
100% right.
So go on. Didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, I mean, I don't want to take over the show either. I have a tendency to talk a lot. So
no, the microphone is yours.
Yeah, and we can I like interrupting like a tennis match. We can go back and forth.
You bet.
But you're right, Mark. We are innately designed for legacy. We have eternity in our hearts. It is how, and if we lose that thought process of thinking multi-generational, we do not think right and we don't act right. We do a bunch of short-sighted things that we are going to look back on and say, why did I do that? And the vision I have for my wife and I, is we want to be great grandparents. Like, not a great grandparent. I want to be that, but a exceptional grandparent. And as you think about that, like, I've interviewed thousands of people in 20 countries, and I've interviewed people who are at the pinnacle of their career, at the worst point of their life, and people who are literally minutes away from their last breath. And I've come to that conclusion, a handful of them. One of them is, I think the ultimate vision for my life, or one's life, is set a goal to be an exceptional grandparent, because that takes long-term planning. It takes legacy thinking. It takes financial stability. It takes building myself up as someone who has the ability to then pour into my family. I need to have time freedom, financial freedom, wisdom to do that.
Yeah.
It's like, there's my goal. That is my vision. I want to have a mess of grandkids, and I want to spend the latter years of my life pouring into the coming generations. And that is what I have my sights set on.
That is beautiful, man. I love that long-term play. Because, yeah, you're right. So many of us, we get into the grind of the day-to-day and we lose sight of the long-term plan and the long-term ramifications of our day-to-day lives. That's awesome.
Well, and think about it. If I don't have, like, some people might be listening to this saying, I don't really have a vision. I don't even really know what I want to do with my life. I guarantee you, whatever you're doing right now is what God is calling you to do. Now, that may sound crazy. Well, what if I'm an addict? What if I'm a train wreck of a dad? You are in the middle of your calling right now, because God wants you to maximize what you have. He might tear down what you have, but right now, and even if you can hear my voice right now and you're questioning your call, or if you have missed your call, you are in your calling right now, because God can meet you right where you are at and put you on track right now. And so I think understanding, like, if somebody's hearing like, man, I don't have a vision for my life. Here's the vision right now, is to say, okay, today somebody is going to tell the story of my life today. Whatever I'm going through, how good, bad, or indifferent, this story is going to be told. How do I want that story to be told then? And that's how I need to live today. So we have to make the today and that legacy connection and pull that into our day-to-day life. And that's how we can do that. How do I want to be remembered? How do I want this story to be told? I'm going to live that way today. And so even if reverse engineer that a little bit more, well, how do I do that? I don't really know how I want to be told. I guarantee you, if you are a man, if you're a woman, if you can hear the sound of my voice, honor. Have your first thing be honorable. Whatever I'm going to do today, whatever I put my hands to, whoever I talk to, no matter how they treat me, I'm going to live with honor today. And if we just start there, and we honestly say, okay, Lord, meet me here. I am not where I want to be. I don't think I'm where you want me to be, whatever that looks like. I'm not a dad I want to be. I'm not this that I want to be. I'm going to live with honor. I'm going to maximize what I have, and I'm going to seek the Lord in every single little itty bitty thing that I do. And I can just do that by having him in my mind, having him in my thoughts, listening to those kind of things. So I think that's, Mark, without getting too far into the weeds, that's how we make this legacy and day-to-day connection, which we have to pull that legacy mentality into today and have it motivate our behavior.
That is powerful, man. I love that. And such a good reminder that, and it's easy for us to say, and maybe harder for some people to hear, like you said, no matter what your situation is right now, even if it seems like things couldn't possibly get worse, you got to believe that God has a plan. There's a reason why you're going through what you're going through now. And just look at your life, Jeremy, having a kid at 19, I'm
right.
sure there were moments during that season of life where you thought, what in the heck is going on? I'm in a downward spiral. You lose your business, lose your money, but you wouldn't be where you are today had you not gone through those pains and trials.
100%. Like our business is getting ready to, go to a totally new scale. And I've had businesses do this before in my early years where we've had international customer base, all that kind of stuff. But because I wasn't a sustainable man, those businesses could not sustain because I was the driving force of them.
Mm-hmm.
So now being patient for all these years, for at least the last, 5 or 6, being super patient and just putting our heads down and working and refining and getting better 1% at a time, as we say here, that put us in a position to really do something on a large scale now, but only because I opened up to God and God changed me as a man, because the man is going to go do those things. I don't need to become a better CEO or a better, a more fit person or this and that. First, I need to become a better man first. And in the process of all those things, because whatever I do, the man in me is going to go do it. A better CEO doesn't make a better husband. That connection doesn't exist, but a better man makes a better CEO and makes a better husband.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right? So you transitioned from being a single dad, met the love of your life, who you're married to now. You've got a family. How did you, and we're talking about Throne Publishing that I talked about earlier in the intro, but how did you go from your role as a single dad into where you are now? What revelation led to establishing Throne Publishing?
Well, I go back to, there was this moment that I had in this loft that I could no longer afford at the time. I had a partner embezzle a lot of money from our company. So I had to, quote unquote, sell him the business. So I lost the business, lost all the money I had and then some. And then a girl I thought I was going to marry at the time, she dumps me and I couldn't get her back. And I think that was kind of the final nail in the head, is I couldn't get this woman back. And that is what brought me then to say, man, like, this isn't a business thing. This is a life thing. I kind of suck at life. And I remember, that's when, thank God, my parents drugged me to church all those years, because that's where I knew to run to. I was not living right, but I innately knew this is where I need to go. So I think, even myself, I got a teenager. There's days that were like, oh my gosh, like, this kid has fallen off the rails, or we fell off the rails, or whatever. My parents drugged me to church every single week. Some days I would honestly be still feeling the effects of what I had consumed the night before, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And I didn't take in any of it, I thought, but I at least knew where to run. And so in that moment, I'm just like, all right, well, I started to go to a church in town in Sioux Falls here. They had a service every week, or they had 5 services a week, I think. And I went to every service every week for almost a year.
Oh, wow.
Then I got this book, Fathered by God, by John Eldredge. I know you know that author.
Mm-hmm.
And right?
Yep.
And in there, my favorite book of his by far, probably my top 5 favorite book of all time. And in there, he breaks down manhood, and he talks about a specific phase of our manhood that he calls warrior. And he talked about God as a warrior God, as one part of himself. It's not the whole thing, but it's a part. And I never heard this before. And he quoted this scripture, Exodus 15:3, which says, the Lord is a warrior. And the picture I had seen of Jesus in my mind was, he was this dude with babies and lambs and stuff. And he turned the other cheek so many times, they finally just killed him. And I didn't want to be that kind of a man. It had no relevance to me. But when I heard the Lord is a warrior, I wanted to know everything about him. And so I remember and I wasn't a praying person, but it was a prayer. I didn't know it was, but I said, okay, if this is how you are, I want to know everything about you. So I am going to, I'm going to start up another publishing company, because I know how to make money in that business. And it's a good business. So I said, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the bare minimum I need to survive. And then every spare second I have is going to be dedicated to knowing who you are, why you made me, and what you want to do about it. And I remember just being like, I'm going to keep asking you until you either answer or you tell me to quit asking. And he ultimately did both. But that's what started me on a path. Is I just was saying, publishing's a business. I know the business. Yes, I love it, but really everything's up in the air right now. I'll do whatever. And then I remember getting to the point where I had started this ministry called Warrior. We were mentoring young dudes, and I was mentoring somewhere between 70 and 80 young men in our market. And I would find these guys by just walking the streets. I'd hand out cigarettes, walk the streets. I knew all the homeless people. That's a little community. It's a network for sure. So you knew when people left, when people came in. I'm mentoring these young dudes, and I said, okay, Lord, if you want me to be this broke minister mentoring these young men, that's what I'll do. I don't like that, but I know that you're using me here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started saying, okay, I'm going to do my last publishing book. This is the last book I'm ever going to publish as my last hurrah. Didn't even charge him for it. And did a good job, finish it up. But then all these people started calling me, and it was ministries that were calling, clients that were calling from all over the country saying, hey, you know what? We talked about doing this a couple years ago. I want to do it now. And I didn't take that, Mark, as like, oh my gosh, this angel appeared and I'm supposed to do this. This is my calling. But I took it as, hey, I'm not done with you here. Keep this moving. I'm not finished with you here. And so that's what I've kept doing ever since, is we have been publishing books. And then, recently we found a really great niche, which is where we interview people's family about their life and make a book for their family. And we call them legacy books. And I love it. And now we have a certification program where we're certifying other people to do it, and all that kind of fun stuff. And so much has come out of it. It provides for my family 100%. I'm so proud of that. Like I'm not reining in millions of dollars, but it's providing for my kids and my wife. Yeah. I love that. And it all got started though. Like I'll tell you when it changed for me was I always had this vision of me flying around in this private jet with these CEOs, publishing their books, doing deals with them, all that kind of stuff. Right. And I had a client at the time who was a $1 billion plus CEO. And we did a deal. And he said, you know what? I want you to fly around with me. I have 7 jets and we're going to go around the country and we're going to do this thing. And I was like, okay, that sounds neat. And I left that meeting, and this guy calls me up that I was mentoring, and he was addicted to gambling. And he just kind of fell off the train for a couple weeks, and I hadn't heard anything from him. And I know what happens when you don't hear from him like that. Mm-hmm. And he called me back, and he's like, I'm back. I fell off. I'm with my grandma. I'm living with her. She's got control of my checking account. How do I get my life back on track? And dude, I was more excited about that phone call than the meeting with the CEO. And that's when I knew, Mark, something happened to me. I didn't make this happen. I wouldn't have asked to be this way. I wouldn't have aspired to be like that. By being in the Word, being in community, being in prayer, God changed me and made me different. He made me desire different things that I would have not have asked him to change me like that. That's how I know being in the Word changes us in ways that turns us to his heart. He gives us a new heart, because I know too, we can become whatever we want to become. Whatever you set your mind to. If Mark Henderson wants to be the #1 podcaster on the face of the earth, you could absolutely do that with the right strategy and the right amount of time. And anybody could become pretty much whatever we want to become within reason. But if Jesus would appear to me and said, you know what, Jeremy, I'm going to make you this legacy-minded, ministerial dude, and I'm going to make you love your family more than anything in the world. And you're not going to live a huge, big life, but it's going to be good and true and justice and honorable. I just said, I don't even want that. Is not appealing to me. It was not appealing to me at that time. But when that phone call happened, I was like, okay, like something has happened and I need to figure this out. Mm. So I kept throwing, and, lo and behold, it snowballed, this and that. And that's what brought me here, though. I was willing to put it all on the line. I was willing to leave this business. And still to this day, if I felt powerfully, my wife and I both knew God's calling us out of this thing, we're gone. Like, we're going to go. I don't see that happening in the foreseeable future, but like, it's all on the table in not an irresponsible way, but that's why I know I'm right in the center of where I'm supposed to be right now. Cause I did truly lay it on the line. I was literally doing my last book I was ever going to do. And he didn't rush in and pour business over me. He just said, I'm not done with you here.
Well, it sounds to me that you experienced the power of obedience. You thought you had a plan, You're going to go about it your own way, but through all of those visits to church and just opening your heart up to Christ and inviting him into your life and just listening to what he had to say, he had other plans. And kudos to you for just, walking away from what could have been a really crazy opportunity and just really following the path that God laid out for you. That's awesome, man.
Well, and I think too, Mark, like it didn't feel that way. And I it's probably the first time anybody's posed it to me like that. And I imagine it's probably true, but at the time I was just like trying to be practical. I was trying to listen to what God was telling me to do while taking care of my family, because he honors that, right? I hear guys all the time, I feel called to do this, but my wife isn't on board with it. I think I'm going to miss my calling this night. It's like, God will never call you to do something your wife isn't 100% on board with. And if that's not the case, then you're trying to solve the wrong problem. It's not a business problem. You got to go work on your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Because my wife and I, total unity on where we're going, what we're up to. And if we didn't have that, I don't think we could do what we're doing to the scale we're doing it right now.
Oh,
I know
for sure.
we couldn't.
Yeah, for sure.
Just know it.
I suspect that he was working on her heart at the same time. And you guys were, ultimately chasing him individually, and he led you both to where he wanted you to be.
There's no question about it.
Yeah.
I mean, she was in the same story, same narrative from a female perspective. And we met when the Lord had us to meet. There's no question about it. And neither one of us was looking for a relationship. That's the one thing in common I hear, for single folks out there is when you're not looking for it, when you put it down and you're okay with not having it, that's when they show up.
Exactly. You just stop trying so hard, and then it'll happen for you.
So like that's what I did. And maybe I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but that's what happened is I was dating this woman, Mark, and I always tell dudes, like, if you want proof that miracles still exist, you look at my wife and then you look at me and you will have no question. Miracles absolutely come true today. But when I was dating her, I'm like, this woman is completely out of my league, and I know I'm falling in love with her. So I've got to figure out what the heck am I going to do with this? And all I said in my head was, as I'm just like, okay, I am going to, every time I drop her off, before I pick her up again, I'm going to be a 1% better man. And only 1%. I'm not going to be able to, I'm not going to be able to get 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever. I'm going to be a 1% better man before the next time she sees me. And that was my goal. And now we're married. Like, so I know it works, dude. So it still is our core, one of our core convictions that drive our business is 1%. And that's where it came from. That's how I know it works.
So we've danced around your business quite a bit. Throne Publishing, you help people document their legacies. Let's dive into that a little bit and unpack that. So we're talking about Throne Publishing. Walk us through at a high level. What do you guys do day to day? What services do you offer?
Thanks for asking, Mark. The what we're doing day to day and where my focus is now is two couple main areas. One is we have legacy books, where you can get, like, if you have your mom or your dad, we interview them about their life and make a book for your family. And we're having a do-it-yourself product come out for that. That's an online course. It's actually out right now, but we're going to debut it in September. I'm super excited about that. But where I'm really focused on is guides. We have really good processes, infrastructure of how we go about doing what we do. And we have a really processed way to do it. And we have convictions that drive it. So we're training other people to be able to do this because the demand's that big. When we peeked our head out and said, hey, we're going to do legacy books into the market, we found it was an instant attraction to it. There was an instant market there, and one big enough for me to say, okay, I don't want to have 50, 60, 70 employees. That's not a business model I want to build. How can we meet the demand within the model? And it's certifying guides. So that is my number one focus right now, is bringing those people on board. But also we have another product. My other main focus is this thing we call our Awaken Workshop. And it's where somebody says, hey, I've always wanted to write a book. I have all these concepts, all these ideas, this and that, all this experience. I don't even know where to get started. Where do I begin? And I sit down with people, and in one day I get their whole book outline done. And I absolutely love doing that. It's an intense day, but it's so clarifying for them. It's so transformative for these people. Like I've had people fly in from all over the country right here to Sioux Falls to spend this day with me. And I just love to do it. So those are the two areas that I do, and where my focus lies is those Awaken workshops and with these certifying these guides. So I appreciate you letting me talk about my business for a little bit, but that's what we do. And that's where, Mark, I get this conviction of, I know this stuff works. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
you've seen it.
know exactly. I've seen it over and over repeatedly, and it happens every time we're going over this with grandma or grandpa. The most formative, the most content, Mark, this fascinates me. The most content that comes from people's legacy books isn't their good years, it's their hard years. It's their formative years.
That's interesting.
That's where the bulk of their content comes from. Because after they do that, their formation happens, and then they just execute what they learned. And it's easy, and it's really kind of boring. I'll give you an example. There was a gentleman, him and his wife, really successful insurance agents, just great people, been in insurance for 40 years, family business. So I'm thinking, man, we're going to have a ton of content about their business. Well, there was about 8 years of his life, he was a highway patrolman. And he described that as he got his PhD in people. And that was where the most richest content came from his story. And after that, he got out of that. He did those things. He learned about people. And then he just went and started his insurance business. But it was just executing on the formation that happened during that 8-year span of him being a patrolman. And I see that over and over and over again. So it's like, I use that to pour into people. I'm going to give you guys a website where I'm giving away. I just want to give it to you, like the number one concept that I've learned from these people. And piece of it is that when we're in our hardest times is when the most formation happens. I know that's not a new concept, but I've just seen it over and over and over again. Whether it's an atheist in Australia, an entrepreneur in Singapore, or someone right here in South Dakota, that is just as true as the sun's going to set tonight.
Well, like the old saying says, you can't have a testimony without a test, right?
That's the truth. And I've seen it, and I've seen it repeatedly. So we can take hope from that. You know what I mean? I mean, we're all going to go through it. Everybody does.
I think it's important for people to be able to, whether they're writing a book or not, to be able to share those moments and those seasons with the people that they love. So when you've got somebody who has had maybe a painful past or a painful experience that honestly the rest of the family maybe deserves to know about or wants to know more about, and the person who's gone through it maybe has a desire to share, but it's maybe too painful for them to do so, or they're just not quite sure how to articulate that. Like, how do you, when you run across that with the people that you interview for books, how do you get past that?
Yeah.
You know, we haven't all had storybook lives. And like I said, many of us have had very painful past. So how do you move past that and find the good nuggets worth sharing?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it happens with every single person who's being honest. And so we have core convictions in our company. Values are what's important to us. Convictions are what we sacrifice for. And that's how we make all of our decisions. So when we're in a place where it's like, hey, this was a hard season. This was a season I don't know how to talk about. Maybe abuse happened. Maybe just really bad stuff happened. How do we talk about these things? We first encourage people. Talking about hard things is very, very good for the next generation. And how we talk about those things is through the filter of honor. Mm. It must be honorable. It must be honorable, and it must be true. So we have to try to say something that's true in an honorable way. And if we can't do that, we don't do it. That's not a place you're ready to talk about. But I'll tell you, like, here's our overarching concept. It's called burn. You got to take your story and you got to burn it. And here's what I mean by that. If I throw a bunch of materials into a fire, only the things of lasting value will be able to withstand the flames. You're going to have diamond, you're going to have gold, you're going to have steel, right? So we're going to take your story and we're going to burn it. And only the things that are left, the diamonds for beauty, the gold for value, the steel for strength, those are the things that you're going to use to tell your story. And if it isn't those three things, you burn it. It stays in the ashes. Leave it. Don't pass it on. Know what you may need to discover. You may discover you need to heal up in some places, and that's okay. Now you know how to address it. You don't pass it on. Because if you don't heal from it, it's going to go into the next generation. It's going to come worse. So that's how we think about those things, Mark, it is good. It is right. It is true to talk about hard things and to do it in a way that is true and honorable.
That's a really powerful tactic, man. I like the way that you're thinking about that and the way you laid it out. And I just think about all the people, I kind of alluded to this a minute ago, all the people out there who are hurting for whatever reason. It may be a really, really old hurt that, has left a really deep scar, or it may be something fresh. But I think that whether we are sharing those in the form of a book or just conversing with loved ones about, this is why I am the way I am because I went through this. I think that we have to be able to have those healthy and maybe difficult conversations. And if we do it through this burn process that you talked about in a way that, we're sharing our dirty laundry, so to speak, but we're doing it through the lens of honor. I think that really empowers those of us that maybe do need to share something, and it takes kind of the burden off of us too. It's like, man, I've got this thing that I need to get off my chest, but I don't want this person who I'm telling to judge me or think less of me because of it. But if they know that I'm telling it in an honorable way with the hope of an honorable result, then I think that it just opens the door for those kinds of conversations. And I can see why that, or how that would be a really powerful tool for you guys as you are curating these stories.
Yeah. And it helps, just like you're making a connection, Mark, with our day-to-day life. I'm going to make sure it's true, but I'm going to make sure it's honorable at the same time. And if it can't be, it has to be both. I'm not going to lie, but I'm not going to dishonor somebody. So even being a single dad, that was one of the things that I would say. It's like, okay, listen, this is my son's mom, because it wasn't very good between us. I'm just going to be dead honest.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to say, listen, this is my son's mom, period. If somebody talked about my mom poorly, no matter how true it was, they would not be my friend very long. So I needed to find a way to talk to my son, who's a teenager, about things that are true in an honorable way. And so that's what I would say that built more trust and respect between me and my son, who's now 15. And we need to have trust and respect more than any other time because he's seen me do that for 15 years.
Yeah. And you're quickly getting into the season where trust is going to be a key factor in your relationship with him. As he goes out and does stuff with his friends, you've got to be able to trust him, but he knows that he's got to know that he can trust you as well. And you're not going to, I'm getting off track here, but you know what I mean? Those teen years.
You're exactly right.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Does his mother know how you approach those things with him? Is there an appreciation of that from her?
I know my son sees it, and I know he sees me doing that to this very day, because I have open and honest conversations with him all the time, so that we can keep doing what you're talking about doing, Mark, which is we keep building that trust. We keep building that respect by being trustworthy, by being respectful.
Well, man, we're coming up on our time here, but one question I like to ask everybody, and it's always interesting to hear people's spin on this. We talk about legacy, and that word conjures up a lot of meanings in people's heads. And the obvious ones are like, what do you want your tombstone to say? What do you want people to think of you or say about you when you're gone? But when you pair that with the word inspired, when you hear that phrase, an inspired legacy, what does that mean to you?
Oh man, I love the title. I love the name. To me, it means a lot of things. One of the things is it means I lived a convincing life. My life was convincing. I didn't convince people, but my life was convincing because I was convinced. And so I had fundamental truths that I didn't sway from. And I think when we do that, we cause people around us, if we're true, if we're honorable, we're going to cause people around us to say, what is it about this person? For good and for bad. But to me, the inspired legacy is living a convincing life in a way that I don't have to preach to my son because he sees me do it day in and day out, no matter what. Good times, bad times, okay times. I think that to me is living an inspired legacy, is your life is convincing. It causes the next generations to want to be like you. And I think that's the highest compliment we could ever get, right?
I love it, man.
This is great, Mark. I love what you are up to here.
Oh, I appreciate that. And, coming from somebody who lives in the realm of legacy, that means a lot. We kind of scratch the surface on a lot of stuff here. I want people to know where they can find out more about Throne Publishing, about you and what you've got going on, the services that you offer. So tell the listeners, where can people find you online?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that, Mark. And I really appreciate anybody listening. If you can hear my voice, I want to give you this concept, this burn process. I'm actually giving it away right now. I don't know how long I'm going to do it for, but it's like, this is the one thing I've learned from all these interviews, all these conversations, all these legacy conversations. And you can go to burnprocess.com. That burnprocess.com is the website. And I just put out a free mini course. There's like 7 or 8 videos or something like that in it. But that's the highest thing I can bring to the table. And like I say, I don't know how long we're going to do it for, but right now I'm just giving it away because it is the number one thing I have learned accumulatively from all these interviews. And I use it every single day, this process. So thank you so much, Mark. And I want to say it again. I said it when we started, but if you haven't been to theinspiredlegacy.com, there's great free resources for men. And I like, I think maybe last week you had, I think there's a blog post, or if not you got a podcast with them, The Boy Crisis.
Yeah. Warren Farrell.
Dr. Farrell. I mean, you got great content out here, Mark, and even your free guide about 9 ways to be a better dad. Like, I want to say to people, support this, go out there, watch it, engage with it, share it. You're doing something extremely important, Mark, and I know you're going to do it for a little while and it's going to completely take off on you. And that's my hope for you, is that this thing becomes so big that you don't even know what to do with it, because you're doing something very valuable. And I know you are leaving an inspired legacy yourself.
Oh man, thanks so much. That means a lot. I really appreciate that. And yeah, wouldn't that be fun if it just blew up? We'll see. It's
going to happen.
Jeremy, I want to thank you for your time. I want to encourage everybody listening, check out burnprocess.com. We'll link it up in the show notes, as well as Throne Publishing, and make sure you guys can get connected with Jeremy and all he has to offer. Jeremy, you guys are doing outstanding work as well. Appreciate your time, brother, and hope to have you back on the show at some point in the future.
I hope to be on, Mark. Thanks so much. Keep up the great work.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. That was really impactful for me. And really what stood out in that whole conversation, for me personally, and maybe for you as well, is when he explained his long view of being an exceptional grandparent and what he needs to do now to kind of set the stage for that, for it to come to fruition. That really, it just made me think of my life sort of through a different lens and a different perspective. So I'm going to stew on that one. That was really good insight. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, if you guys are looking to keep your axe sharp by surrounding yourself with guys like Jeremy, other like-minded dads, I want to invite you to join our free and private Facebook group. Again, I've talked about it before, but join that group. You're going to find encouragement. You're going to find support, accountability, spiritual growth, and there's a link to that group in the show notes of this episode. Again, I want to thank you guys for listening. Remember, subscribe, leave a review. It's imperative that you guys leave a review in iTunes. It's really the only way the show gets found. And if you got anything out of this episode, please share our message, because I really do believe that when we all work together to lift up fatherhood, we're going to change the world one dad at a time. Until next time, live inspired.